Okay, psychoproctology, the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of butt-headed, absolutist, narcissistic, gaslighting, hypocritical, egomaniacal, psychopathic, douchebaggy, jackass, dumbass, bullshit artist, con man, bully, authoritarian, a-hole, jerk-off, sociopathic, dark triad, extremist, authoritarian, whatever you want to call it, behavior. I start here with that long list because while I'll use this or that term, I blur the distinctions. I'm not fussy about the taxonomy of dirtbag behavior, which you might think odd in someone trying to get much clearer on what's really going on with them. I find all of these terms vague and impressionistic, even the clinical ones. Psychopath originally meant ill soul. Narcissist was named after Narcissus, who couldn't stop looking at himself, which is ironic since narcissists will do anything to avoid looking at themselves. I'm trying to get to the essence, the fundamental driver of this kind of human behavior, what all total jerks have in common. So I don't really care which particular term we spit at them in anger, disgust, and frustration, including the clinical terms, which lend our spitting the air of high-minded, neutral clinical authority. In this video, I'll focus on why working toward a clear and careful diagnosis is so crucial. Crucial for addressing the real problem with such folk, and crucial for what I call your ground standing. Keeping your feet firm on the ground when dealing with them, since they'll try to trip you up. They have boundless confidence. If you don't have grounded confidence in your dealings with them, you'll surely fail. Your confidence will come from keeping your focus target on the real underlying problem, not being distractible by whatever bone they try to pick with you. 2/3 of my book, What's Up with Assholes, is me fussing toward a realistic diagnosis on the assumption that if my diagnosis is off target, my treatment and prevention will be too. Here I can't help but hint at some hunches I've got about what's really going on with them, but my focus is on motivating you to get serious about diagnosing them more precisely. At present, the popular diagnoses are haphazard, many of them mistaking the symptoms for the disease. For example, sure, they're lying, hypocrite gaslighters, but are those as the causes or symptoms of what really makes them tick, like time bombs? Misdiagnosis has been our weakness in dealing with Trumpists or any of these types in our personal lives. We haven't pinpointed what's up with them. Oh, they'll tell you what's up with them, but only to confuse you. They want you fuzzy on the diagnosis. They want you to feel like the problem is you, any problem, so long as it's not them. They want to keep you ungrounded. By now, I assume that keeping decent folks ungrounded is a signature characteristic of butt-headed behavior. In part 1, I drew a parallel to learning to improvise music. You woodshed, practicing at home to ground yourself so that when it's your turn to improvise on stage, you can relax and let it rip without losing your bearings. You woodshed to ground your mind and fingers in concepts and patterns. You gain what I call pattern fluency, know-how, second nature, so you can improvise fluently to whatever you hear. It's not just music. For example, it's also talking. As a kid, you practice words, and now you're pattern fluent. Sports, chess, whatever. There's woodshedding or practice for grounding you in any of them, so you can improvise to what flies by in real time. As with all parallels, there are similarities and contrasts between improvising music and improvising in your dealings with hero bots. When I'm improvising with a band, no one is trying to trip me up. The band is supportive. Their goal is to lay down a thick groove, a plush carpet on which the improviser can roll around. Not so with Trumpists. They're trying to trip you up. They want you to lose your bearings. In this respect, it's more like competitive sports. A football player is improvising against a team trying to trip them up. Still, staying grounded with Trumpists is much harder than that too. They don't just play the game, they game the play. They keep changing the rules of the game so they can declare themselves the winners no matter what. Finding your psychoproctological footing is harder with them than in music or sports. You really have to know what you're trying to stop them from getting away with so you can improvise without losing your bearings. You'll remember my motivating diagnostic question is what distinguishes a butthead, since it can't just be that you butt heads with them. I don't like them is an insufficiently precise diagnosis. Indeed, you have to set your personal preferences off to the side as much as you can to do careful diagnosis. Racial profiling is law enforcement biased by personal preference. It's a diagnosis of criminality based on I don't like them. It's an ineffectual distraction. With racial profiling, police end up busting too many non-criminals and ignoring too many criminals. That someone pisses you off doesn't prove that they're a butthead any more than if someone's not interested in you, it proves that they're a narcissist. For diagnosis, I mean, what is it about these people's behavior that's not an okay way of living? In general, what is it about a butthead's habits that make it something we have to try to keep folks from getting away with everywhere? Remember how I framed the psychoproctological challenge in part 1. In a free, adaptive society, you don't get to tell everyone how they should live, but you still have to keep a-holes from getting away with it, or it won't remain a free, adaptive society. We keep getting tripped up by Trumpism's ever-changing moralizing demands. Trumpists keep accusing us of violating this or that moralizing principle, and we keep letting ourselves get tangled up in their accusations. We keep trying to defend ourselves, which they call getting defensive, one of their many moralizing no-nos. We try to earn their respect so they'll listen to us, and we never succeed. That's why it can feel like three-dimensional chess. We're hopping around on the ground level trying to meet their moralizing standards. They're only playing on their one vertical imaginary dimension, them up on their heroic high horses, us down in the swamp where dumb, evil, weak losers belong. They'll accuse us of anything. It doesn't matter what. They aren't thinking about what their words mean. We have many moral standards. They have one mindless goal expressed through a vast catalog of bullshit moralizing standards. Their one goal is to keep declaring themselves the best no matter what. They blare their moral police sirens at us for an infinite array of infractions. They blare it so loud it drowns out their boundless violations of the array of moral laws they pretend to enforce. We keep taking their words to heart and defending ourselves against them. In that kind of game, the best you could hope for is all parties walking away claiming heroic victory. Them by having tangled you up in a mountain of moralizing shame, you for having defended our high and wide scattershot moral standing, despite them neither hearing nor caring about a thing you said. On moral principles, we went the way they went, but to opposite effect. Let me explain what I mean by that. I see two ways people deal with moral principles. I'll call them moral moronics versus moral triage. Moral moronics is piling more and more moral principles on as a way of pretending you're the most moral. It's like claiming you're the best guitarist because you own every kind of guitar. You can never have too many of any of them. Just pile more and more on. You can never have too much freedom, harmony, kindness, respect, pride, whatever. Anything that sounds good, you're for it and to the max. Extremism can't mean extreme compared to some local standard. Everyone's extreme by some local standard. To me, extremism is better understood as moral moronics. You pretend you can take an infinite number of moral principles to the extreme. The moral triage approach to morality is to recognize that moral principles are constraints. They tie your hands. You can't fight well if your hands are tied and tangled up in an infinite array of moral constraints, turned up to infinity. If you want to be moral, you have to prioritize and minimize. You have to be very selective about the moral battles and sub-battles you pick. You know, the serenity to ignore what you can't or needn't change, courage to fight for what you can change. That's moral triage. Don't tie yourself up defending moral principles you can ignore or can't realize. Focus on the moral principles that are make it or break it. That's what diagnosis is about, knowing what battles are worth picking. Moral triage is why I'm so fussy about diagnosis. It's so I'm confident about the battles and bones I pick with these guys, and not distracted by their moral moronics. I invite you to reflect on whether you've let yourself flap in the breeze on moral principles, the way the moral moronics do, more and more on. I think a lot of the resistance movement has. We picture an ideal world in which all our moral dreams are realized, it makes us sitting ducks for people who will moralize to shame us for not being ideal, as though it proves they are. Thanks for wondering with me. Get in touch if you want to try a half hour of free psychostrategic consulting about dealing with your doubts or about gaining back lost ground from some jerk in your life. And our free psychoproctology study group is on. I got a quorum of interest, so email me if you want to get mailings about that too.